Notion feels like almost like a homecoming or something at a few levels. It feels like this kind of amazingly natural fit for maybe my own interest, experience. It's about being extremely good at the thing that you do. Makes it sort of distinctive from other things and also makes it have a lasting positive impression with the user. We are like makers, like we're builders. When it's awesome, we tell other people about it.
Hello everyone, welcome to Growth Meets. I'm Kate Suma, Growth Advisor, previously Head of Growth Design at Mira, and here we learn inspiring growth stories from people building the best products we use every day. And this time, I literally talked to someone who is building the product I'm absolutely in love with, which is Notion. And I had a fantastic conversation with Randy Hunt, Head of Design at Notion. And personally, I learned probably two things that really surprised me. So the first thing that makes Notion exceptional is that they make the thing, meaning like a prototype or design, as soon as they start thinking about the idea or initiative. And only after that, they start creating some documentation and explanation, everything that describes this idea. So simply put, they don't have a strategy that manifests itself in a lot of work around the work. And for them, nothing gets traction if it's not a design or prototype, which is beautiful. I hope you will find this episode useful. And if you do, please subscribe to the show, share it with someone who can find this useful, and please share your feedback, comments, anything that helps me create this podcast more useful and insightful for you. So now let's dive in and listen to this episode. Hello, Randy. Welcome to Growth Mates. How are you doing today?
Hello, I'm doing great. Yeah.
Awesome. I'm so happy to have you here. It's been on my list, like, to have someone from Notion team for the last year. And now, finally, we have this conversation with you. But your career is way beyond just Notion, where you recently started. You have a lot of big names mentioned on your profile, like Etsy, Grab, and now you're head of design at Notion. So I'm always curious to start these conversations, but by just understanding your personal growth story a little bit. So how did you get where you are today? Can you tell us a bit more about that?
Yeah, sure. I think so I've been at Notion for maybe 5 months now. And in a lot of ways, Notion feels like almost like a homecoming or something at a few levels. It feels like this kind of amazingly natural fit for maybe my own interest, experience, skills, disposition. There's a bunch of stuff that makes it feel like really right. And also maybe how I desire to be spending my time and the kinds of people I want to be spending my time around. Like before I was at Notion, so I just moved back to the United States when I joined Notion, where I was living in Singapore for the last 5.5 years. Just before I came to Notion, I was working at a very small coffee startup that was doing coffee hardware. That was like smart hardware. So it was like hardware, software, e-commerce, brand. I love that because it's like multi-faceted in all of its like sort of design mediums, the methods of delivering an experience to customers, and is very, food products, and especially something like a coffee product, they're like straight to people's heart, and chemically they're like straight to their brain. It's just like a really fascinating.
For me, it sounds like a dream job, right? Like working on a product that you consume every single day, which is physical, tasty, Why
Exactly,
you decided to leave that fancy, nice startup environment to join?
Yeah.
But of course, let's do the reverse engineering on your story and let's follow that.
Reverse before that, I was working at a crypto exchange named Kraken, one of the better ones by my assessment. I mean, both of these have an element of marketplaceness to them, which is a strong through line through a lot of what I've been doing in my professional life. Multi-sided marketplaces in which like buyers, sellers, sometimes other suppliers, are kind of matching supply and demand to like grow overall marketplace activity. A little bit of that at the coffee company, because we were matching like roasters and their products with and consumers as well. Crypto exchange. Before that, I was at Grab, which is like the super app across Southeast Asia. Started as ride hailing, then became food delivery, grocery delivery, kind of quick commerce kinds of like handy market things, but also payments, a digital payments platform, point of sale in like restaurants and retail, payments rails behind the scenes. We got a digital banking license, one of the first two issued in Singapore, to kind of offer like a neobank, like directly, like be the bank of record itself. Bunch of interesting stuff there, but largely marketplaces. Before that, I was working on Artsy, a contemporary art marketplace, selling kind of like blue chip artists, high order value, low, like smaller audience, and very much in the contemporary art scene, like kind of right in the center of that market. Before that, I was at Etsy for a long time, like 8 years, and leading design across product, brand, marketing, research, a bunch of other things during a major like growth period in Etsy's history. We took that company public in that time. Grab also kind of public at the time I was there, so some parallels to these growth stories. Before Etsy, I was running a marketplace. It was called Supermarket. It was designer-made products. Kind of like a small Etsy, a tightly curated like corner of Etsy is really what that business was. Before that, I was doing client service work, and one of my clients was my partner that we started the marketplace with.
I personally believe that one of the most important jobs of anyone who is creating a digital product is to make the first user experience smooth, intuitive, and memorable. For that, we need to provide users with a friendly assistance throughout the whole experience, beyond just the first session. Comment AI is a user assistance platform that exists for the sole purpose of helping users. It provides a user-centric alternative to traditional pop-ups and chatbots. The first thing that I love about Comment AI is their Copilot. This is an AI support agent that can use AI to answer questions, perform actions for the user, or show them how to do some complex things with ease. The second thing that is incredibly useful are nudges. This is a great alternative to annoying pop-ups. Instead of bombarding users with too many messages, you can show them a proactive and relevant message that guides them right to the action. And you can get all of this within Comment AI as a no-code platform that product, support, and marketing teams can use to influence user behavior in a positive way while respecting their needs. Thank you again, Comment AI, for supporting this episode of GrowthMates. So many marketplaces along your career, and it sounds like it's how many years, like 20 years career or so. It's like, it's probably quite a long story, right?
It is, yeah. There's a through line that connects all these things. Before I was ever involved in design professionally, I was involved in music. As a musician myself, kind of like the singer, songwriter, front person in like band. These are like loud, like punk rock band stuff. Semi-professional, let's say. But I was running a record label for a while. And so sort of an entrepreneurial component. I have a great deal of empathy and appreciation for like small businesses and sort of ramping things up off the ground. Also, like when you kind of are participating in like cultural things like, art and music, but especially kind of like indie cultural things, there's a real like as much decision making is happening around kind of like intuition and a sensibility about what's right for like the creative output and an audience than any kind of like, analysis or something, from like a more business or like marketing standpoint. That I think has this like through line back to Notion to me, and also some of the best teams and ways of working along that like, couple of decade journey. There's a lot of information, a lot of data, a lot of quantitative things that sort of could inform choices we make. But I think at the end of the day, part of what makes Notion the team and Notion the product, Notion the company like so special is that there's a very real like human judgment, intuition, belief in trying to make things extremely good because it's almost virtuous. Like the right thing to do is to try to make things very good.
Interesting. I think I've noticed that I haven't been involved like into your internal secrets of how you're doing what you're doing. But when I was looking at like the product itself and what is published, it feels like you are very focused on this high quality element. At the same time, you're focused on simplicity and how to keep things simple, how to do more with less. And maybe we can talk a bit more about that. So Notion is very famous for its high quality with a relatively small team, probably, if we compare with other companies at similar stage. And your approach to building teams, attracting people is probably quite unique and unconventional. So you've mentioned in some of our first conversations that you're optimizing for talent density, not talent mass, which I really like. And you have a high bar of talent, of course. So can you tell more about who are Notion people and what values and mindset you are looking for in people we are attracting? So if somebody who is listening to that is dreaming about getting a job at Notion, so what they should actually try to do today to become a part of your team in maybe a couple of years?
Well, we think about about craft and like craftsmanship in all kind of roles and functions at Notion. So it's not about design craft only. It's about being extremely good at the thing that you do. That has to do with sort of understanding like methodologies, like the ways in which to do things, and then being good at them, but also having judgment about which of them to use when, right? So it's not so procedural as like there's a way and I do it. It's also not like my way, right? It's more like my informed judgment about which is the right way in the situation and an ability to deliver on that way, that sort of process, methodology, and outcome to meet a high sort of quality bar in terms of everything from, kind of functionally correct to usable to performant to eliciting like a emotional response from a user that is like largely positive, right? And that sort of endears a person to the product experience and therefore the sort of brand and the company at almost like at an irrational level,
Interesting. And how do you uncover these qualities in people when you're interviewing them, when you have very, very little time to even understand like these complex things, because it's very hard to uncover these things if you have just one portfolio call with a person. Maybe something helps you to see these signals early on.
Well, we're looking for, let's say we're going this kind of interview process, whether we have like inbound interest or we're trying to go out, and kind of recruit people. Sometimes it's explicitly, we know a person, their body of work, but you're trying to target and recruit this. But other times you're going to go out and to learn more, right? Because maybe not all the evidence is obvious, but there's like some hints and some clues. So then what do those hints and clues look like in every direction? One is about visual design. And I think that can be easily oversimplified or sort of misread, like in the professional community, to say that, like if I were to say, describe what I'm about to describe and then stop there, you'd be like, oh, they only care about like UI, right? Or you might even in a somewhat derogatory way be like, oh, it's like the dribble days or something, which is not like accurate at all. And I'll sort of explain why. But it is so important because I think is reflective of a few other things. One is an intuitive and inherent sense of how to make something seem and feel special, which kind of cuts through, makes it sort of distinctive from other things, and also makes it have a lasting positive impression with the user. And like high sensitivity and quality to like the final rendered output of like visual elements is a strong indicator of that. The other is that in order to get good at that, either people have like just a crazy amount of natural talent, or they put in a ton of effort, like a ton of reps to get good at it. And often it's the combination of both of those. And so seeing that output and maybe seeing a lot of it, like a body of work that is representative of very, very good visual design, is an indication, I think, that the person is likely sort of obsessed with doing great work. And they just like have made themselves like better and better at it by doing it over and over again over time. And so this comes out very like craftsmanship, almost like journeyman experience. It's like it is a craft. It's like a trade, and you like learn the tools and you get better at using the tools and delivering the outcome by doing it over and over again. So it's not only a thinking, it's a making, right? And that gives the evidence of it. The other is often in very strong visual design, you have very good like typography. And this ends up being a really strong like shortcut to understanding people's organization of information, ability to kind of understand hierarchy, what things are more important, like a hierarchy, sequencing, pacing that also play out in maybe interactive experiences over time, right? And it can play out in narrative things across like, time-based media. Maybe they're making film or something. The ability to like form a point of view about what is important amongst a set of information and then present what is important at the appropriate hierarchy such that the audience or user does the same. They understand what is important because you've presented it as important. And to do that with a level of like taste, and sort of like attractiveness that pulls a person's attention in or feels like appropriate to the context. So there's a lot of clues in visual design. So then we're looking at like, it's funny, people don't use resumes that much this way anymore. And certainly people are now like configuring resumes to be largely like parsed easily by automated systems and things like that. But when someone shares a resume or even like a cover letter, what I look at is the typography. Like, I don't care where you went to school, but I care about the hierarchy of information, like the pacing and stuff. There's an attention to detail, right? So it's a very graphic designy answer. But then the same is true when someone's sharing like, websites, links, like apps. Looking at the visual design isn't the complete story, but there's a lot in the visual design that's indications of other things that we're looking for. Plus, we want good visual design. The other is when people have like side projects let me back up. What is helpful to see is things that have really been made, really been built, really been used by people. The extent to which that happens, there's just like way stronger evidence of the ability to kind of take things from beginning to end. Also, you tend to have much more learned experience about how to make something better based on user input and feedback. Like once the thing's out in the world, research or not, which like there's good research methodologies before. They're like research or not, you're probably getting input and feedback and you're probably iterating on the thing. And so that I think is just helpful to understand. So you see some body of work of stuff that's been made and shipped. And then sometimes there's people who are early in their career, maybe even students or something like, I don't have that experience yet. But I think the truly standout people do it anyway. They're like, I had this passion project. And it's funny, they're not, I would say the ones that are most likely to be kind of, successful or to even fit the culture aren't out like sort of creating and spinning up side projects so that they can have a body of work for getting a job that someone like myself might look at. Although that's a good, maybe like tier 2 answer. I think the tier 1 answer is people who just like so love building stuff that these side projects are just things they're like naturally doing. They're like, I just wake up and I have an idea I want to put out into the world. And that idea, I'm going to build some software to make it happen. And they just have love
so many questions
Yeah.
On top of that. So first of all, it reminds me, I don't know, of Ikigai philosophy, if I can compare it with that.
Okay. Yeah.
It's like when you're mastering certain craft to the extreme level, like for a very, very long time, being dedicated to that craft element or like mastery of that. If it comes to design, it's design. If it comes to product management, it's product management, etc. Engineering, maybe combination of all of these things in more like generalist manner. But when I'm imagining the reality of product work in a company like Notion, the question that I have is how to execute this craft with a high bar of quality and how to uncover the same mindset or principles or values in people who are not designers. Let's say there is a product manager and they have certain KPIs and they need to launch things faster. And there is a product designer who wants to polish all of the details and make it excellent. And there is an engineering person who is executing that, probably also has a very, very high attention to details. But for me, the most interesting dilemma is always happening between PM and designer. So how do you make sure that, for example, people who are not designers, who are stakeholders, executives, PMs, they have this similar understanding of quality and craft?
So I think that you could tackle a lot of how do you operate inside the company in certain ways. So that's like, this is one of the ways. And one really powerful answer, it doesn't complete the story, very powerful answer is really who you're hiring, right? So there's another version, which is like, what are the processes, methodology? How do you train people? But if you kind of get a group of people together who are far more likely to already see things that way and sort of believe in that way of working, then you're more like, how do I nurture and cultivate that? How do I make sure it's, the environment is optimized to do the things we believe are important, et cetera. So that's one part. And so not unlike what I just talked about for maybe how I might evaluate designers. I mean, I've only been here 5 months. My observation is that we take a similar level of attention and care to hiring people in other roles and other sort of functions. There is I think, in a design user experience sensitivity and awareness that is biased towards in like across our product development organization. It happens at different degrees and levels for sure, but I think that there's sort of a floor in a way that engineers and product managers and other participants kind of, meet as well, that make them sort of far more likely to be the kind of partner a designer who values those things would want because they value many of those same things too. I give a really awesome concrete example. One of our product leaders, and we were working on some designs on a mobile app where just some UI elements had kind of been reconfigured a bit as part of this evolution. And designer had been working on the designs kind of in this future state. And then we built a prototype, kind of a working prototype in our development environment, downloaded on the app. And it was kind of interacting like some of our future state designs with some of our current state elements. And one of our product leaders came over to my desk and like showed me the phone and was like, the way that this new button overlaps these when we scroll down, that feels like probably not what Notion like wants, like it wasn't hitting that sensitivity in the executional detail. And I was like, this is a beautiful moment. It's exactly what the designer would have said. It just happened to be that the product manager said it first, So there's a lot of shared understanding around the quality of the thing that we put in customers' hands,
Honestly, yeah, in my experience when I was still individual contributor, these like business people who really understand the craft element, the UX, like heuristics and all of these things were like best partners to work with. And I would like to also think about the other angle. So I've been observing like what is happening in other companies where designers feel like included, where they feel a little bit more isolated. And it seems like in majority of the companies, which might be not like representing the best culture as you have at Notion or other well-known names, they have a problem of not being involved into the strategic discussions, let's say. So they are treated more like executional role. So product managers are like defining the whole experience or the solution, and then design just focused on execution. So how do you see that? How is it in Notion when designers are getting involved into discovery, or what is even the first input that designers should get, in your opinion, to start working, to start building that excellent craft?
The way that sort of product development, let's say at Notion works, or really, let's use product development. So ideas are kind of emergent and can come from anywhere. They come from users. I mean, users very directly. Maybe users like suggest or request something that's interesting. They come from users more in an aggregate or kind of analyzed way. Our research group or insights team, data science might, see patterns or trends in the work that they do and surface problems or opportunities that we might then inspire ideas or solutions. They can kind of be sparked by the market in a way, like, oh, here's other things happening in the space or similar stuff. They can be, inspired by life more broadly. And I think this is where it gets kind of like interesting. Will you experience a nice hospitality experience at a restaurant? And then you're like, there's a metaphor here for like what the first use experience of a software could be like. And you're like, okay, what if we made the new user experience more like, showing up at this restaurant? Like, is there something interesting in there? Like maybe that's an idea. So they can come from lots of places, but they get traction, I think, by being understood by other people, because this whole thing's like a team effort. And the way that we help things be understood by people is two things. Like it manifests itself in two ways. One is you kind of like write about it, and kind of like writing is thinking, right? It's like a well-written document that explains the thinking is a tool for getting the thinking done and organizing information, clarifying your thoughts. And then you have this artifact that is others can consume asynchronously. You can comment on it. There's lots of interesting stuff that happens. But the other is we basically like draw a picture of it or make a prototype of it. We like kind of make the thing, and that helps it be understood by other people. And then sometimes the combination of these is really the like superpower in a way, because there's the thing itself, that prototype, something that I can touch, feel, use. And there might be some meta thinking around why that thing is, or here's the thing, but I'm imagining this thing, is best for these kinds of users, or maybe delivered in this kind of way, or here's the questions I have about it. That like kind of lives in the, in a piece of writing. And so we basically do those two things. We make stuff and we like write about the ideas of the stuff we made. And I would say that what might be different from some organizations is it might largely be about like that writing part, or it's more kind of like making a deck, like you do this like strategy that manifests itself in a lot of the work around the work. There's like a lot of, here's background data, here's market opportunity, here's sizing stuff, here's how long we think it might take to make some, and somewhere in there is like either here's a design or like here we will do design. And I think that's your part where it becomes more like executional. I think for us, well, we do some of those kinds of things, not like we don't do other normal stuff a business might do, but I think it has to do with sequencing, emphasis. And I think for us, nothing gets traction if it's not like a design or like a prototype. It's a great environment to work in as a designer, but whole culture self-reinforces that too. So let's say an idea emerges from like an engineering place. Right? It's a performance idea. Oh, this thing is like not performant for these reasons. We're trying to speed it up. But in order to speed it up, it runs into the user experience. We're going to have to change something about how we ask for data from users, how we deliver things to users, something that like pushes itself right up to the pixels. One of two things would happen. They'd be like, we can't kind of work on this anymore unless there's like a designer in this, like it's gotten to the point we just have to bring a designer into the thinking because the solution lives in like a design space and we don't have to think with a designer. Or the other path, which I think is just as good because you end up at like healthy outcomes. Someone attempts to make it. They like build the prototype, they start to design or whatever, and it's maybe not reaching the same bar like our designer would, but you have a start and we have like a real thing to look at, touch, use. And that kind of gets the flywheel going around the future conversation. Should we invest in this more? What might the solution be like? Has it inspired us or compelled us in such a way to look into the dependencies? Or is there more of a strategic opportunity or risk here than we might have, originally imagined? How does this connect to the business need? Often it starts with the thing, like the prototype.
I think I sensed the difference. I think I understood your differentiator in a way. Sometimes companies or like product managers and designers are getting into this loop and trap that designer is waiting for certain inputs, right? I will not start doing these things before you give me this and that, like business goal, data, strategic document with everything. But the actual work and ideation and the quality of ideation can be better if you already start doing some work, if you already start building some prototypes, and then on the go, you can polish it, you can modify that. And yeah, I think then the synergy and co-creation starts happening more organically if you have the thing, as you said.
Yes.
You need to have
the thing. Gotta have the thing.
It's very simple. Yeah, but sometimes because of all processes, like step-by-step discovery, blah, 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 we start getting the thing in 2 months after starting discussing the idea, right?
And the reality is sometimes we make a thing and then we just trash what we made and make another thing. It's not precious, but the fact that we made the first thing instigated the conversation and the thinking that afforded the opportunity to then make the next thing. And I think I'll make what sounds like a critical statement. I mean, it's an observation, but I've been complicit in exactly the situation I'm about to describe, like many times. And because I think it's just another way that work can go and organizations can go. And it's not necessarily right or wrong, but it's different. And it is one in which designers and the design function more broadly, I mean, even let's expand it to include things like, brand and research, not just like the software product, but like a robust kind of, design practice, can end up in a path towards needing to influence the business or wanting to, help drive strategy, be a strategic partner, have a seat at the table. Anyway, there's a bunch of similar themes that are out here, end up taking on and doing a lot of things that in the past we might think the designers like don't do, shouldn't do, whatever. And then you'll hear like complaints or observation, right? There's like a cynical view of this, which is like, I'm doing the job of a designer, a product manager, and then it's like, oh, I'm told I need to partner with my data scientist, so I got to learn that. I'm told I need to know front-end engineering, so I got to do that. There's kind of like a cranky, like designers have to do all the stuff thing. And I think a lot of that approach and that skills development inside certain environments in order to get design to be like more influential, more strategic, maybe more upstream, to be, a bunch of things, is, by my assessment now, I've had like some distance and time from these situations, I think is often, while born from good intentions and not always wrong, in most organizations, most of the time, it is kind of because of, and then helps to reinforce an environment in which a lot of work is done in order to get to the place of having permission to do good work. So you kind of build up all these skills and capacities almost as like defensive skin. So you get like a layer of like design leaders or managers who like are pretty disconnected from the craft of making and building things. They're storytellers, which is a great skill to have. Definitely awesome. No problem there. Who have become very good at understanding like the business and partnering with cross-functional business leaders, understanding maybe the user data behind informing the things, the business data might justify the impact or investment thing. Also, very good skills and experience to have. Nothing wrong with that. But it ends up resulting, I think, largely in something that looks like, here's a pitch, right? Or here's the proposal for how we should invest in making the experience better. Like, please give us, kind of permission, resources, budget, timing, whatever, to go pursue that thing. And then the making happens somewhere like later. And I think that largely what happens inside Notion, and I think other pretty healthy environments, they're around, and it's just different. Again, that other thing that might be exactly what's necessary to be successful inside certain kinds of organizations, but it can be hard for designers. There's a reason why they feel the way you're describing. At Notion, it looks more like, what are the truly unique things that designers have to offer? We are like makers. We're builders, and we want to spend as much time as we can doing the unique value contribution that designers can make. And so how do we minimize the amount of that other stuff? I mean, one, for designers, but also for other people, not because they're bad or wrong, but I think you can get in this cycle of feeling like the strategy work is the work. And you're like, but only when executed well and delivered to the customer do you find out if the strategy was any good or not. You got to make the thing. You got to ship the thing. And so we just put this emphasis on the building and making as to really, really push against, I think there's these natural tendencies in organizations or cultures to do some stuff against it.
This is very interesting because I think I'm representing this growth function, right? So I'm working mostly with the growth teams, and I've been building the growth product design team. And I think I sometimes got into this trap of like designers, in order to get even the resources in terms of time to execute something really good, need to pitch why it's important, need to create some storyline. But it feels like also what helps are some set of principles. And I'm sure I know you have principles. I even found them, Notion high quality principles, but probably you're not using them as like a Notion page that you're reading every single day. They are just in the mindset of your folks. But when I was collecting this set of high quality principles, what I uncovered that Notion described in different forums, and I combined them in one sentence, like deliver on the promise, reduce distractions, and ensure ease of use. Probably have more of them, but it sounds great. I love this. And I'm curious, recently, maybe in your 5 months of being in Notion, what were the examples of some like work things that your team created using this idea of reducing distractions, ensuring ease of use, do more with less, just to make it a little bit more like specific for people who would like to do something like that, but they are not fully understanding how to apply this in action.
Yeah, sure. I think there's a few, maybe I think of a few concrete examples. One isn't like a full project arc or something. It's more of like a thing that comes up in almost like in daily or regular work. And we found ourselves using the term prior art a lot. One, there's some members who have been part of our team for a long time. And some of our core problems or experiences are things we've like revisited, you can like come back to them again. And so there's been thinking and work done against, or like exploration against something that may still be relevant. And so we both welcome and try to seek like prior art on a lot of these problems. And that can even extend outside our the bounds of our organization or product. We'd say like someone else has solved something like this in the past. Why that is important is it is about it's a version of doing more with less in some decision making. We're like, there's certain things that are like a net new original problem unique to the situation, and other stuff that maybe we've like thought about before. And there's absolutely no value judgment whatsoever with just going back to the thing that was done 2 years ago. Seems like it was 80% of the way there. Let's just like pick that up. Maybe we have to adjust some visual design, be relevant to today's context, and like maybe that's it. Like it's very practical. Again, it's very like it's all about making the thing. And you're like, well, the thing was almost made. Let's just finish making it. So that's a bit of like a behavioral kind of like do more with less. One kind of like organizational and principle, which connects to the previous point we were talking about, is by not having designers by process or standard spending time doing lots of like presentations and things as part of their normal methodology and normal work, where we're saving time. It's choices like that allow us to do this kind of talent density thing as well. A designer can maybe just cover more ground in other ways because they're doing less of the meta work and more of the work itself. So then let me try to think of an example that gets like right at the like product experience itself. The way we think about Notion kind of conceptually, strategically, and in its execution is as these sets of reconfigurable pieces. So for a person who uses Notion and they write a paragraph of text, they write another like paragraph of text, and we use this terminology called blocks to describe them. And all these blocks have a bunch of attributes. It's like a really high degree of systems thinking and systems execution. We use like Lego as a metaphor. You can kind of reconfigure these things in all sorts of ways. All the time, as we're like getting towards trying to solve something, we go back to like these primitive block elements and types. We say, can this actually be solved with one of our existing primitives? Like, we're starting to see something new happen here, but does it really need to be new? Like, what if it was just that same thing we did before, but instead of defaulting to showing all of the UI elements, that thing already has some like settings or, configuration somewhere else that displays only a few of those elements. What if in your situation, it's that same thing and it just starts with those settings already turned on? So there's only a few of those elements displayed. Or the team is like, we all drink the Kool-Aid. So the team's really in like looking at everyone's designs in this way. It's like, how? I think what you're doing is actually just another page. Right now, you're not thinking about it like a page, but it's probably just another page. And if we can sort of reduce it down to one of these like elemental ideas, one of these sort of like primitive components in our system, then one, it just pushes like the kind of the thinking, really like honing and refining. But you get a lot then like for free with it, because a lot of features and functionalities we add are you get everywhere you use that primitive. It allows the system to be simpler with fewer things, and it allows improvements to the system to express themselves throughout the system without like much additional effort.
So I think simplicity, or like this doing more with less, is sort of core fundamental principle in general. Like when you said designers don't have to do this meta layer of work, like preparing presentations, pitches, etc., process type of artifacts, it really saves a lot of time. I've been in situations when designers were creating presentations for weeks for certain high-level stakeholders review. It's it's crazy.
Not that. Yeah. My heart is sad when I hear you say that. I'm like, no,
unfortunately. And it comes to like corporations as well. But you are already quite relatively a big company. However, I'm also wondering, like, these discussions, they sound very, very nice. Like how designers bounce these ideas, giving feedback to each other. How do you make it happen? Like, what is the environment for that? Do you have some design reviews, product reviews? I don't know, daily, weekly, ad hoc? Is it organized in a way, or it's more natural and it goes just as it goes?
Yeah. Well, it's kind of like yes and yes. Like it's organized, and there's some things we do regularly, but not too much. We don't want too much of that, like sort of like that cruft or that meta work. So we have, regular sort of design review critique as a team. It is a structured, it's like same time every week kind of thing that pretty much self-operates. Team members assert what they would like to share then. And sometimes they'll bring projects once, twice, 3 times through this like venue. It is kind of everyone's peer level feedback. There's no hierarchy in this. And it's an opportunity for getting feedback and input from other designers. It's not blocking step of the process. You don't have to do all of those things. It's not required, it's not like a required step, but of course, if you didn't do this step, you probably are missing some great input, right? So that's how you get some of the structure. Same time, same place, every week. We use a Notion form with automations that people like sign up on. They pick the slots, and then we're using our new charts feature. So this funny, kind of leaderboard of who's brought the most stuff to crit and what stage of the project. It's just for fun.
Nice.
But it self-operates. Individual teams have, their own like kind of cadence when they're working on projects. But we do a lot of stuff ad hoc on top of some of these, structured things, kind of like all business initiative product kind of check-ins regularly, every like 2 weeks on most things. Design critique every week. But other than that, everything else is a little more organic or ad hoc. And we use this terminology a lot to say, like, we have jams, which is where we just like work on stuff together. Like, let's schedule a jam. It's not a meeting.
Oh my God.
It's a jam.
When
and like, if you come with the meeting.
Yeah, I remember like we started having design reviews because the company was already 2,000 people and design organization like over 60 people. We started having stream reviews, like stream design reviews.
Yep.
And in my growth design team, I called them growth design jams, which is fun.
Great. Yeah, that's great. So we use this music metaphor a lot for us. It's like we think about the way we work is kind of like jazz. And I think that's an easy metaphor. But if we like really like kind of extend the metaphor deeply, it's like, one, the players are very good. Like they know their instruments really well. They're not like amateurs, That doesn't mean it's like somebody can be young and be like a virtuoso, or somebody can be great because they have like many, many years of experience or something. But there's no like everyone can hang, like everyone can participate in the playing session, right? And it's like having a house jazz band at a bar downtown. Like the show, like the band is there every Friday from 9 p.m. to midnight. And they are like well-practiced musicians. They're like doing stuff otherwise, they show up, they deliver. In that window of time, they're improvising. Sometimes someone is taking more of a lead than the other person. Sometimes there's only 5 people, sometimes there's 8 people, sometimes there's 3. Like there's a lot of organic stuff that happens in that moment. This combination of like the skills and quality and experience, the comfort level with one another to be able to like trust to improvise and the skills to improvise, a structure in which for the improvisation to happen that's not kind of like pure chaos, right? And then like a broader environment that sees this all as good and wants to support it and nurtures it. Why are they playing jazz over there? Everybody's like, oh yes, jazz, good. Yeah.
Oh wow, it's interesting. And probably the most important component of that is space, having space for this improvisation, like mental space, but also physical space, time for that. I see we are like getting to the finish line of this episode. It's been amazing to just maybe get, I feel like maybe it's just 1% of your culture or feeling what's happening inside. You're not sharing a lot. Like I've seen like not so many folks are open and sharing everything what is happening in Notion. So I feel very, very good about this opportunity. And maybe just a couple of questions to you as a tradition in this lightning round before we finish. One favorite interview question that you asked some people who you interviewed to Notion team?
I often like asking, what's a product or tool you use all the time, even though you think the design isn't good?
Interesting. What do you want to uncover with this question?
I think it gets at, it's like a backdoor way to get at what they consider good design or not. But it often gets at deeper experiential parts of design, even if like the execution of the thing itself. You're like, oh, because it makes this thing easier in my life better than anything else, or often it gets a benefit more than the thing. And it's nice to understand how people think about, value creation.
Love it. All right, then one or two more questions. Talking about simplicity, is there one thing you wish products would just remove from their experience just to make life easier, just to make the experience easier? If you noticed like a pattern, like in every single product, you see this thing and you wish it would be just removed.
The sort of cookie acceptance notifications on the web are just the
oh gosh,
friction. Born from a place of like good intent around consumer information and protection, it's just turned into an absolute nightmare in user experience. It's really unfortunate. Yeah,
maybe we will live in the age when it will be removed, or I don't know, automated somehow. And the last thing, as growth mates, is like sort of community of people who value good user experience, good crowd, but also trying to build products that get some traction and grow in products. Are there any folks who you wish to see on this show someday? Like, I don't know, people who you know or admire or would like to listen to the conversation with them?
I think that Mig Reyes over at Duolingo, I've known him for a long time. I have a great deal of like respect and trust for him. But I think that, I think he also has a great sensitivity around products that make you love them. And that, I think, drives growth in ways that are like not always easily measurable, but it's just like super powerful. That's like get straight at the like word of mouthiness of stuff. Like when it's awesome, you tell other people about it. Whether you're telling them on social in a way that's like trackable, or you're just like telling them over dinner, that's like really good stuff. Yeah.
Nice, good stuff. Thank you very much for joining today, for sharing how you do things, make things happen at Notion. I really appreciated that, and I hope our listeners will find it inspiring.
Yeah, thank you.
Cheers. Thank you. Bye-bye. Thank you for listening. Subscribe to the show on growthmates.club and get free playbook with frameworks and insights. If you find this valuable, please share it with your friends and colleagues, and subscribe to the show on your favorite platforms to get new episodes. Let's keep growing together.